Welcome to Civil Defiance, the show that dares to shine a blinding light on the shadows where power truly resides. I'm your host, Otto Bismarck. For weeks, we've danced around it. We've touched on the edges of it in our discussions of political corruption, financial instability, and the suffocating pressure of an ever-expanding surveillance state. Today, we step directly into the blast zone. Today, we talk about the Great Reset. This isn't a theory whispered on a back alley forum anymore. This is a framework laid out in plain sight by the most influential figures on the planet, world leaders, central bankers, billionaire tech barons. They speak openly about the need to reset the global economy and restructure society in the wake of recent crises. They claim it's necessary, a chance to build back better, to usher in an era of sustainable, inclusive capitalism. But when a handful of unelected globalists speak of resetting the entire system, I have to ask, who gave them the authority to decide the fate of 7 billion people? And what exactly are we surrendering for this promised better world? The phrase itself, the Great Reset, became famous in 2020. It's an initiative by the World Economic Forum, that annual congregation of the world's most powerful people in Davos, Switzerland. Their stated goal, to use the global shock of the pandemic as a unique opportunity. An opportunity, quote, to steer the market toward fairer outcomes, ensure that investments advance shared goals, and to harness the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution. Sounds noble, right? Fairer outcomes, shared goals? But the documents and speeches paint a far more chilling picture. This is about control. Ultimate, absolute technocratic control. It's a vision where national sovereignty is minimized, individual rights are conditional, and every aspect of your life, from the food you eat to the energy you consume, is centrally managed by algorithms and global mandates. When you hear the phrase, "you will own nothing and you will be happy," it's often dismissed as hyperbole. But it's a direct quote from a WEF essay predicting life in 2030. Think about that. No private property. Everything is a service, a rental, a subscription. They say it's for sustainability, for efficiency. I say it's the end of individual liberty. The fundamental pillar of freedom is property. If you own nothing, you can be told anything, and you have no ground, literally or figuratively, to stand on for defiance. And let's be brutally honest about who is pushing this. It's the very same entrenched financial and political elite, what I call the Uni-Party, that has failed to solve every major crisis of the last 50 years. They created the instability, they profited from the chaos, and now they claim they are the only ones capable of saving us from the mess they made. This is the oldest con game in history, just updated with sleek corporate branding. This is where the toxicity begins. The mainstream media and their political allies dismiss this as a deranged conspiracy theory. Why? Because the implications are too staggering to confront. It's easier to label the messenger than to debate the documents. They tell you to trust the process. We here at Civil Defiance tell you to read the fine print, because the fine print says compliance is mandatory. If the Great Reset is the blueprint, the weapon of ultimate control is the central bank digital currency, or CBDC. Let me be perfectly clear. This is not cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is decentralized. It operates outside of banks and governments. The CBDC is the exact opposite. It is a completely centralized, government-issued digital dollar, euro, or whatever currency, controlled by the central bank. Why is this the absolute game changer for control? Because it turns money from a medium of exchange into a programmable tool of compliance. Think about it. Right now, when you use cash, your transaction is private. When you use a debit card, the bank knows where you spent it. But with a CBDC, the government, or the central bank, which is essentially the same arm of the financial Uni-Party, knows every single transaction in real time. But it gets infinitely worse. Because the currency is digital and programmable, they can attach conditions to it. This isn't just surveillance. It's active control. Imagine a world where your digital currency comes with an expiry date a use it or lose it feature designed to force spending and prevent saving, effectively dissolving your personal economic power. Imagine a world where your funds are programmed to only be spent on approved goods. Say, a green social credit score dictates that you are not allowed to purchase more than 10 gallons of gasoline a week, or your funds are locked out of buying certain types of meat. This isn't dystopian fiction. People in governments and central banks around the world are openly discussing this capability. They are excited about the prospect of controlling the flow of money to steer behavior. They talk about it as a sophisticated tool for monetary policy. I call it the digital leash that runs straight back to the government's hand. And how will they sell it? They'll use fear. They will talk about security, about eliminating crime, about stopping financial instability. They will say it's a necessary step to fight the next pandemic or the next climate crisis. They will tell you that cash is dirty, cash is for criminals, and that the only safe, responsible, and compliant way to transact is through their digital system. Look at the playbook. First, they create a crisis that necessitates a massive government intervention and the printing of trillions of new dollars, devaluing your existing cash. This creates the demand for a stable new system. Then, they introduce the CBDC as a solution to the inflation they caused. Then, they begin the slow, steady demonization and elimination of physical cash. Once the option of cash is gone, once every citizen is funneled into the CBDC, the game is over. Your financial freedom, your autonomy, your ability to dissent without immediate, total financial sanction, it's all gone. This is the toxic intersection of economic power and technological surveillance, designed not to serve you, but to manage you. The CBDC is the financial shackle, but to be truly effective, the architects of the reset need a physical, undeniable point of connection to control the individual, a universal identifier. Enter the push for global digital identity, often cloaked in the noble language of public health and convenience. You see the slow creep everywhere: digital health passes, vaccination records linked to travel, and the inevitable integration of all your data, financial, medical, travel, and personal, into one single, verifiable biometric ID. They are building a system where your access to society itself is conditional on your compliance with a shifting set of centrally mandated rules. This is the ultimate evolution of the social credit system. In this system, compliance isn't just financial, it's holistic. Did you consume more than your carbon quota this month? Your ID restricts access to certain transportation? Did you attend a protest the Uni-Party deemed misinformation? Your social score drops, and your ability to get a loan or travel internationally is immediately revoked. This is the power of a fully integrated digital ID linked to a programmable currency. It gives the global architects the power of instant social and economic excommunication. This narrative is so toxic because it forces a confrontation with what we believe about the future of human liberty. We are being asked to trade our fundamental, inalienable rights, like privacy and bodily autonomy, for the illusion of safety and convenience. They frame it as a necessary evolution for a complex, crowded world. We frame it as the creation of a digital cage. Look at the technology: biometric sensors, AI-driven surveillance in public spaces, the merger of data from your smart home, your car, your phone, and your digital health wearable. All of it feeds the ultimate algorithm that decides your worthiness to participate in society. This is the fourth industrial revolution at its most terrifying. It's not about robots. It's about the seamless integration of human existence into a managed, controlled, and trackable network. And who benefits? The companies building the infrastructure, the financial Uni-Party funding the development, the political figures who gain ultimate power over the populace, the people who tell you to trust the science and trust the technology, while simultaneously suppressing all dissenting voices as conspiracy theories. The toxicity lies in the fact that to oppose this system, you are immediately branded an anti-science fanatic, a danger to public safety, and an enemy of progress. But our defiance is not against progress, it is for humanity. We refuse to be reduced to data points in an algorithm designed by a global elite. Let's zoom out now and look at the geopolitical endgame of this great reset agenda. This isn't just about micromanaging individuals. It's about dismantling the nation state and consolidating power into supranational bodies. The concept of national sovereignty is an obstacle to a unified global management system. When you have a group of non-elected, powerful global bodies making decisions on everything from climate policy to pandemic response, the democratic voice of a nation is marginalized. The constant push for international treaties and global regulatory frameworks, especially in health and climate, are not simply good faith cooperation. They are incremental steps towards ceding control from elected, accountable national parliaments to unelected, unaccountable global bureaucracies. This is the Uni-Party on a global scale. It's the consensus of the elite across all national borders that they know best, and that the will of the local populace is an inefficient impediment to their grand design. Think about the way narratives are synchronized across major Western nations. The talking points on climate, on energy, on banking, on public health, they are all remarkably consistent, almost as if they are following a single global script. This is not coincidence. This is the result of years of strategic, focused influence by organizations that groom and deploy future leaders into key positions across governments, corporations, and media. The conspiracy isn't that they meet in secret. The conspiracy is that the coordination is so flagrant, so open, yet the public is expected to believe it's all random chance or benign policy alignment. The toxicity of this subject is that it demands we question the very foundations of the modern political structure. It forces us to ask if the difference between a Democrat and a Republican, a Tory and a Labourite, is merely a distraction, a theatrical performance to mask the deep underlying agreement on the ultimate goal, centralized global governance. This is why national populism, this surge of defiance against the global tide, is met with such fury. When people demand border control, energy independence, or a return to national self-determination, the globalist Uni-Party reacts with outrage. They call it isolationism, extremism, or fascism, because anything that disrupts their consolidation of power is an existential threat to their agenda. The goal of the Great Reset is to make national government an obsolete relic, replaced by a nimble technocratic global body that manages resources, populations, and, crucially, information. The elimination of borders, the blurring of national identities, and the standardization of global policy are all stepping stones toward a world where your only true allegiance is to the system itself. To successfully implement a system of such comprehensive control, you must first conquer the mind. The most toxic element of this entire conspiracy is the psychological warfare being waged on the population. They call it managing the narrative. We call it information dictatorship. Any viewpoint that questions the official narrative, whether it's on vaccine efficacy, climate models, election integrity, or the intent of the global elite, is immediately labeled as misinformation or disinformation and aggressively suppressed by tech platforms that work in lockstep with the government. This is the censorship arm of the Uni-Party. The goal is not to convince you. The goal is to isolate and paralyze you. If you believe you are the only one who sees the pattern, the only one who questions the agenda, you will likely remain silent. They create a climate of fear, fear of a virus, fear of the climate, fear of your neighbor, and then they provide a single compliant path to safety, which is always through increased control. This is the brilliant, insidious mechanism of toxic conformity. They are training us to voluntarily surrender our freedom. They don't need a dictator. They need a docile, terrified, and dependent populace. They need you to ask them for the digital ID. They need you to accept the CBDC because you're scared of cash being unsafe. They need you to embrace the smart city surveillance because you think it will catch a criminal. We are being conditioned to believe that freedom is chaos and control is liberation. This is a profound spiritual sickness that infects the modern soul. The very act of discussing this, of connecting these dots, the UAF, the CBDCs, the digital IDs, the globalist consensus, is an act of civil defiance. It is the rejection of the manufactured reality presented by the people who stand to gain the most from your subservience. Our path forward is not to become consumed by paranoia, but to become consumed by actionable knowledge. They thrive on your feeling of hopelessness and overwhelming complexity. We must break it down, expose the simple, raw agenda, power over people. So, what is the antidote to this silent coup? What is the civil defiance required to resist the Great Reset? It is simple, but not easy. First, reject the digital chains. Preserve the ability to transact outside of the centralized system. Support local economies. Barter, use cash, and explore decentralized alternatives that the central banks cannot control. Second, defend sovereignty at every level. Defend your personal sovereignty over your body and your data. Defend your local sovereignty by engaging in local politics, because global control starts with local compliance. And demand that your national leaders reject the ceding of power to unelected global bodies. Third, become an information rebel. Refuse to accept the manufactured narrative. Seek out and share information that is being suppressed. Understand that when the entire establishment, political, corporate media, and tech unites to dismiss a topic as a toxic conspiracy theory, that topic is likely the one that holds the greatest threat to their power. The ultimate goal of the Uni-Party is to manage and minimize human experience. They want a predictable, trackable, compliant herd. Our defiance must be the affirmation of unpredictable, messy, glorious human freedom. We must choose the uncertainty of liberty over the sterile prison of safety. They can print the CBDCs, they can design the digital IDs, they can hold their summits in Davos, but they cannot force you to comply if enough of us simply refuse. Refusal is the core of civil defiance. The toxicity of this issue comes from the knowledge that the people you were told to trust are actively working to engineer a future where your individual life is merely a data point in their centralized system. We see the framework, we know the intent. Now, the battle is in the execution, and the front line is your own mind, your own choices, and your own willingness to look up and say no. Thank you for joining me on Civil Defiance. This subject is volatile, it is dangerous, and it is necessary. Don't just internalize this, act on it. Seek out the documents, question the agenda, and talk to your neighbor about the future being planned for them. I am Otto Bismarck, and this has been Civil Defiance. Stay defiant.